picked up a phone and said, "Hey, oh, hey, George, how the shit are ya?" And it turns out to be George Bush. I've been trying to think of all the different people that he's palled around with. Some of them are just so interesting. Don Aronow built the cigarette race boats, and he was another special American guy like Bill France, and he had this unique carny kind of barker, thing. They could charm the birds out of the trees. Well, Don Aronow had an intense giggle when he laughed, and it was an infectious giggle. So whatever's going on, everybody thought was funny because his giggle was so great. But he used to loved to tell Brock stories. They'd go out on the cigarette boats, and Brock did some stories for the Florida Marina Patrol. When we went out on the boats, I went with them, the Harbor Patrol, searching for drugs. When we were getting together, it was before we were married. Don had built a cigarette boat for us. Brock was writing for Boating magazine anyway. Those are parts of his life that really people don't know how kind of dimensional he was. He wrote for Boating, he wrote for Sports Illustrated. He won some major awards for features in Playboy in the early years. Got the Ken Purdy Award from Playboy magazine. And he wrote for Life magazine, American Heritage, Washington Post. I don't know how many, 15, 20 books. He was just dimensional. He did a lot of different things that he really is not known for, but those were just parts of his personality. And he was going to do a project. Well, he did a project boat for Boating magazine, and that's where we got the cigarette boat from Aronow. It was navy blue and red, and it was the fastest, oh my God, boat in your life. And Brock and I were kind of dating. We were a couple, and my kids were little. We used to go up and down, in the Thousand Islands. We spent a lot of time up there, and he'd do stories on the boat. But every time we'd get on the boat, the kids and I'd have to strap in, and I'd have to hold on to them because, he thought the faster, the better. And the kids would be levitating. They'd be just kind of lifting in the seats. And then, of course, when one boat hears another boat and they know the engines and they know the sounds, then there becomes a team of boats. And so there was the enjoyment factor was in little fits and starts. You could only really enjoy it if you were running the boat. The skill factor was staying in the boat when it was running. But he did a lot of stories on that. I can see the covers. I don't remember the years. But Aronow, he was assassinated. And we had stayed at his house 2 weeks before he was killed. And it was so strange. We were leaving to go to Munich. Brock and I were going to be there for a month. John Frankenheimer was working on a racing movie. And so Brock and we stayed in Munich together. But we had just left Don and Lillian Aronow. Lillian Aronow had said to me, it's so interesting, she had been engaged to King Hussein of Jordan. And she was a girl from Fisher Island in Connecticut. She finally gave him back his ring because she was afraid of the lifestyle. He was always surrounded by guards and the danger and whatever. And here, 2 weeks later, Don gets assassinated in his car in the marinas. And we were in Munich, and we got the message saying that he had been killed. You never think about knowing anybody who was assassinated. And they were just getting through telling us the stories about, and her, she had a little boy, and she just didn't want the dangerous life. And here here Don is blown away. But he was telling Brock said he was there one day when Don picked up a phone and said, "Hey, oh, hey, George, how the shit are ya?" And it turns out to be George Bush. Bush owned a cigarette, and Aronow built boats for everybody. He also built boats for the Israeli Navy and a lot of military stuff that nobody ever really talked about. he and King Hussein of Jordan were very good friends. But he tells Brock, it was very funny, that he had a friend, I think his name was Stein or something. And Aronow had a great way of telling his story. And he's this big, jolly, good-looking guy, and with a great giggle. And he says, I try to do good things for my friends. If I care about you, I do. And he was always giving you a diamond pin, he was just he was a Barker, Carney Barker. But this guy Stein, Brock called me from Florida and was laughing and laughing. I said, stop laughing. I can't hear what the story is. So Don was saying he had this fellow, good friend from New York. He said he lost his wife. His wife had just passed away, and he was very, very sad. But he didn't travel much, and he wasn't very worldly. And he said, I think I'm going to bring him to Monaco with me when we go over for something for Prince Rainier or something. So he takes little Harry Stein with him, and he says he drives me crazy, to Brock, but he says he's still a good friend, and I want to do something nice for him. So they're together, and they go up to see Prince Rainier, and he says, I'm going to introduce him to the prince. So he introduces Mark Stein. This is Prince Rainier. And Mark Stein stops for a minute, and Aronow says, I wasn't quite sure what he was thinking, Brock. It was a moment, And he said to the prince, he grabbed his hand, which you don't do, and he shook his hand really strong, and he said, that's amazing. I once had a dog named Prince. And Aronow said, I didn't know whether to faint or to grab him by the throat and kill him. And he said, everybody stopped and looked, and we couldn't figure out how Rainier was going to act. And he said, all of a sudden, Rainier just broke up, and just cried. He laughed so hard. He said to Aronow after, he says, I never had anybody do that to me in my whole life. So, yeah, the colorful people and the things that go on, are better than the stuff that goes on the screen, really, because you can't imagine what people do.
Premier Financial Services makes it easier and more affordable than you could possibly imagine to own your dream car. Their Simple Lease is one of the most powerful tools in the world of exotic car financing. You get all the benefits like the tax savings and the low payments of a lease with all the additional benefits that you normally find in a traditional finance arrangement. You can build up equity, you can pay it off early, you can trade in and out of cars because you get a very clear and easy to understand amortization table to understand what your payoff will be any month throughout your term. And all the while, the amazing team from Premier Financial Services will be right there to help you along the way. They've been supporters of the VINwiki channel now for 5 years in a row, so we can't thank them enough for that, but mostly we're thankful for the fact that they can help you make it easier than ever to own your dream car. Check them out now.